What's up, everyone? So we'd kind of talked about this in a different video, but I really wanted to cover it in a little bit more depth. This video isn't so much the storyline that I wanted to cover, but it's kind of just like distilled talking points of house hacking. The first one right off the bat is going to be purchase a multifamily property instead of, trying to purchase a single family property. You want to be able to live in one unit and rent out the others, and at the very least be able to live there for free. It'll help you immensely not having any rent or any mortgage on the actual place that you live. Second is live in a house for like at least a year before renting it out. You're going to want to know what you're renting out, what issues it might have. Also, buy in an area where rental demand is high. If nobody wants to live there, you're not going to be renting it out, anytime soon. Use a property management company to manage tenants if you don't want to. This is going to cut into some of your profit, so you're going to have to plan accordingly with this. And every property company is going to be different. You're going to want to review them. Also, you need to regularly review and check out local rental market rates to make sure that you're charging appropriately, whether it's enough, too little. You want to make sure that you're with everyone else. Optimize your space by converting unused areas into rental units. This could be something as simple as a garage, that you can rent out as a storage, area now. Learn basic maintenance skills to save money on repairs. You don't have to clean the boiler or do anything complicated, but just learn the basics. Network with other real estate investors and, get advice for, opportunities. Those people are going to give you the most back because they're already in the area. They know the game. Rent rooms individually will sometimes give you a higher ROI. So it's always something that's good to check out or invest in. Use Airbnb or similar platforms for short-term rentals. If you have a property that you want to rent out, or maybe you have someone who's going to be coming in, they're going to be coming in, maybe they're going to be giving you a good amount of rent, or they're going to paying ahead of time, you might want to rent it out on a short basis, and that's where Airbnb is going to come in really useful for you, Also, another thing, it's important to purchase properties that might need a little bit of work. And I don't mean major construction, but if it needs a paint job, something like that, you want to get the ones that perhaps are not totally turnkey because you're going to save a ton of money by doing that. And consider, rent to own options for reliable and long-term tenants. A lot of times they end up violating them anyways. So regularly save for property repairs and maintenance. You always want a backup. Screen tenants thoroughly to reduce the likelihood of issues. There are some ways to automate this. I use Zillow that I use, which automates basically the credit check and, the criminal history check, which is pretty awesome and ironic because it's me talking. But create, a legal lease agreement to protect yourself and the tenant. Also, you're going to want to know the difference between, a lease and a rental agreement. Some states, there's a considerable difference. Some states, there's no difference. It really just varies on where you're at. So where I'm at, I do rental agreements, which gives me the ability to do things like month-to-month agreements, right? So if someone rents from me and I decide, maybe I don't want this person renting from me anymore, I can give them a 2-month no cause notice here in Vermont, which basically lets me evict them with not having to prove or justify it in any way, which makes sense because it's my property. Whereas with a for cause warrant, wow, wrong video. So whereas for a for cause eviction, you have to be able to show the reason you want to evict them and prove it, and they can battle it, and it can be a court thing. And so it's automatic, just no cause it up, Have an emergency fund that's completely separate in case of, vacancies or unexpected expenses. You're going to have vacancies. It's probably going to happen at some point. Unless you live in like Boston or, some really popular part of LA or something. Use tax deductions that are available for landlords. There's a good amount of them, and you really want to capitalize on that. Consider hiring a real estate attorney for legal advice so you're not just getting it from YouTube and this felon. Keep your property well maintained to try and attract and keep good tenants. And kind of look at just best practices, like don't be a slumlord. Regularly review your homeowner's insurance policy to make sure that you have adequate coverage that at least gives you the basics that you're comfortable with. And learn about local landlord tenant laws to protect your interests. This is incredibly important. You're going to need to understand the law some way, shape, or form. And the nice thing is once you learn it, you're good the rest of your life if that's the state you're going to stay in. Consider property investments near universities for steady student demand. Students tend to be pretty good, not all of them. So, but a lot of them, they're studying. They're not, they're, if they're doing something, they might be drinking, and again, like obviously, this is very arbitrary, but you know what I'm saying. Use property management software to streamline operations. This will help you out a lot. I have like kind of a horrible memory, but I had someone recently suggest to me, it's not that you have a horrible memory, that you have too much going on. Very true. So I try to use software to assist me. Save money by purchasing materials in bulk for property improvements. This works out really well. You got a bunch of properties and they all maybe need the same sink, or you want to revamp them, whatever. You get the point. Maintain a good relationship with your tenants. Kind of goes without saying. Consider renters insurance to protect the tenant's belongings and reduce your liability. This is something that you can mandate in the lease or the rental agreement that they have and prove that they have prior to them even, moving in if you really want to. Keep all rental income and expenses separate from your personal finances. I cannot stress this enough. It's super easy to do. Just open another bank account. And sometimes, like in my state, it's legally required to do. Keep their deposits and everything else separated. Schedule regular property inspections to catch any issues early. It's not about you invading their privacy. It's about you making sure that the property is in good shape, and if there are issues, that you are able to handle them before they become major problems. Utilize green and energy efficient upgrades to attract tenants and save on utilities. Consider rent increases only in line with market rates and local laws. This is extremely important. Like, no one wants to be extorted, Everyone's just trying to live. They're trying to survive. You don't have to go crazy juicing people, but you should also get what your home or your unit is worth, at the end of the day. So offer incentives for longer lease terms to reduce turnover. It also promotes loyalty, and sometimes maybe even makes it so that they'll take care of the property better. Sometimes you may want to consider allowing pets for additional fee to increase rental appeal and generate a little bit more ROI. Invest in properties with unique features to attract potential renters. Utilize low down payment loans like FHA loans or initial property purchases. This is so important. Like 3.5% down is insane, It really opens up possibilities for homes when you do that. Stay updated on local real estate market trends. This is important. And look at the prices of the houses around you. Stay alert. Stay frosty. Consider properties with extra storage space, which can be rented out also separately. Avoid over improving properties beyond what the market demands. You don't need to refinish the floors every couple years. You don't need to, install the latest, greatest, appliance. You don't need to do all of that. Like, The point of you doing this is either to make money or to save money, and remember that.
This is your opportunity. You know why? What I'm asking you to do with social media costs $0. I'm not asking you to run ads. It's giving you awareness without having to pay for it. That is the ultimate for us salespeople.
Use online advertising platforms to find potential tenants. A lot of them are free. You don't have to pay for newspaper spots or, any of that kind of nonsense when the options that are out there, a lot of them are free. Offer online rent payment options for convenience for your tenants. Encourage tenants to report minor maintenance issues before they become major issues. Always conduct a thorough move-out inspection and make sure you video it, and take pictures. Understand the Fair Housing Act to avoid discriminatory practices. You want to know what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. You can't say, hey, I'm not gonna, rent to you because you're in a wheelchair. Like it's just, it's ignorant, but aside from that, it's illegal. And it's a great way to get sued. Encourage tenants to renew their leases with incentives. Consider duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes for multiple rental incomes. Install durable and long-lasting materials to reduce maintenance costs. If you want to, get the bottom of the barrel, you're going to pay for it. You're going to have to do it 3 or 4 times. So you might as well just go with something that's good right off the bat. Doesn't have to be top of the line, but make it decent quality. Keep detailed records of all income and expenses for taxes to be able to maximize your returns on those as well. Purchase rental properties in different neighborhoods to be able to diversify risk. I mean, this is like, if you're going to buy stock, you don't buy just one stock, right? You buy a bunch, right? If you're going to buy crypto, you probably don't just buy one, you switch it up. Consider hiring a CPA. Do this, who specializes in real estate investments. You will make your money back on that one, most likely, if you have a good one. Use energy efficient appliances to save on utility bills. Schedule regular pest control inspections to keep up the property in good shape. Like, you want to make sure that you don't have rodents and rats move in, make sure you check their paperwork. For all of you that have done time, I hope you just laughed. Look for properties with low property taxes. Why? Because who wants to pay high property taxes? Offer furnished units for higher rental rates. This works very well for people like traveling nurses who make a killing, and you can rent them out, get the furniture for free on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. Encourage tenants to take care of minor repairs for a small rental deduction. If you trust your tenants, you can do this. If you don't do it, because they're going to take advantage of you. Implement a strict no smoking policy to reduce damage and cleaning costs. I let my tenants smoke outside because it's basically their house, that's how we see it anyways. I don't mess with them, leave them alone, expect them to leave me alone unless there's an issue. It's kind of how I roll. Maintain a cash reserve to cover at least 3 to 6 months of property expenses. Encourage tenant referrals by offering a referral. Consider implementing eco-friendly features like solar panels or, rainwater harvesting systems to attract economically conscious tenants and, to reduce utility costs, really, at the end of the day. A lot of those things are free. I know there are some states and some towns that actually charge you which is insane, for catching water. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get sidetracked. Moving on. Use technology for virtual tours to attract remote tenants. This is really cheap and it works out really well. And you can give a tour to someone across the country. This is a really basic one. Provide a safe and secure environment to reduce tenant turnover. No one wants to be mugged on their way to their apartment, right? Update your rental property's exterior for better curb appeal. No one wants to live, in a house, you know what I mean? So purchase properties with extra land for potential future development. You get a property that has an extra quarter acre, whatever, a couple acres, grab it. That's awesome. You know, build some geodesic domes on there for 10 grand each and rent them out on Airbnb for $400 a night. Consider properties near public transportation to increase rental appeal. Save money by doing your property appraisal or inspection. Upgrade the security of your property to attract and retain tenants. All of those things are, you know, pretty straightforward. You can install a fence, you can do, you know, hook up some cameras for them. They have ones that screw into light bulbs, you know, so you could do that, hook it up when they have Wi-Fi, boom, now they can see everything that's going on outside of their apartment, you know, gives them a lot more control. Consider rental discounts for tenants who pay several months in advance. Buying in bulk, you know, purchase distressed properties at a discount and refurbish them. This one takes a little bit more effort, but it's totally possible. We're not talking about it collapsing. We're not talking about, you know, the basements caving in. We're talking about basic stuff, you know. Use your co-living strategy where tenants share common spaces but have private bedrooms. You know, this is kind of like a boarding house you could do. If you got a lot of rooms, but maybe you don't have a whole ton of bathrooms, something like that, you could switch that up. Remember, you have more than one strategy to make money on this. Use the BRRRR method, which means buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. I don't know if I got all the R's, but I'm sure someone will tell me. Keep an eye out for government grants or programs for property owners, and there are a ton of them. Improve the property's internet connection to attract young professionals. I know here in Vermont, we had a ton of old internet. You know, I remember I was at one place and it had like copper wire still. Include utilities in the rent for higher rental rates. This one is really kind of dependent on what you're willing to do as a landlord, but you definitely can rent out a property when everything's included for a higher rate. Prioritize properties with ample parking spaces. Consider a property's potential for capital appreciation. And basically that's like, you know, it did all the properties in the last 10 years double in, you know, what they were valued at. That might be a good investment. Know the eviction process in your area. In case of problematic tenants, you're probably going to have them. You're going to want to know what that is. Regularly reassess your property's investment strategy. Join, you know, local real estate investor groups if they have them for like networking and knowledge exchange, and focus on properties in areas that have, you know, good schools and attract families. Diversify your real estate portfolio across as many different property types as you can or you're willing to actually do. Use professional photos and descriptions for your rental ads. If you're having issues with this, like they have free versions of Photoshop you can grab, or, you know, off-brand Photoshop, touch them up if you have to. Do whatever you got to do, you know, but make them look good. Regularly update your knowledge on building codes and regulations, because that changes all the time. You know, like you might want to try taking, if they release, you know, updates for your town, try taking that, putting it into a Google alert or turning it into an RSS feed, you know, so you're automatically alerted. Consider properties with an in-law unit or basements for potential separate rentals, you know, increasing your ROI again. Offer rent discounts for tenants who sign on for longer leases. Choose properties with low homeowners insurance fees. I hate homeowners insurance, so I try to stay away from HOA properties altogether. Because I hate tyranny. Be transparent with tenants about their responsibilities. Have a professional handle your bookkeeping. If you own multiple properties, it's really worth it at that point to make sure that you don't screw things up, especially with the IRS, who won't tell you what you owe. They'll just tell you that you didn't pay the right amount, so now we're going to indict you. An issue. Always get written consent before entering a tenant space. In Vermont, for example, you issue 24 to 48 hours notice. Set up an automatic rent payment system for tenants. This is kind of awesome. Just like, you know, you kind of have auto pay for your bills, you know, same idea. If you can, so you have the system where they don't have to worry about it. It's not a stressor for them. Keep your property's landscaping simple to reduce maintenance costs. You don't have to have a flower garden, a vegetable garden. It doesn't have to be $50,000 worth of landscaping. Just keep it simple. Remember that this is an income property. It's supposed to be generating you money, not you putting money into it. Redundant backups. Look, if you have records, which you do, keep backups of them and keep multiple backups. Remember, one backup is no backups. Two backups is one backup. That's how, get into that mindset, but always have backups, of your digital records. Invest in good security systems to reduce the risk of theft or vandalism. Have a clear pet policy in your lease agreement or your rental agreement. Use a HELOC or home equity line of credit to finance the property improvements. You don't need to save up 50 grand to, do this or do that to improve the property to increase your ROI. Do a HELOC, be patient. Seriously, real estate wealth builds over time and it takes time. It's not something you're going to start up tomorrow and be rich the next day. It's not what we're talking about here. It's not realistic. If someone is doing that, it's probably a pyramid scheme. So just, don't mess with them, keep a list of reliable contractors for various repairs and improvements. You're going to want that. It's important. And again, that's one of the things that having that local connection with people will get you. Always have a written lease agreement, even if it's with friends or family. And I just don't suggest renting to friends or family anyway. You need to be willing to evict those people if you have an issue. Are you willing to do that? With them? It's something to really seriously consider. And be protective, about lead generation for potential tenants. Don't be giving that away to other people. Invest in properties near amenities like grocery stores and restaurants. I know we covered the schools earlier for families. This is different though. It might attract a different group of people. And keep communication open and professional with your tenants. Always respect your tenants' rights. That's a major one because this is a business agreement that you have with them. And you really, need to remind yourself of that and treat it as such because they're entitled to have rights. They're paying good money to use your property and they've earned that right. So continually educate yourself about real estate investment strategies and trends because as they evolve, you can make something extremely more lucrative. You can expand your properties. You can do as much as you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So just remember that and crush it. I'm going to give a little bit more loose video where I kind of talk about, more of along the lines of my story, instead of these kind of general tips in another video. And then one more video after that, I'm going to have it where I answer all the questions that was in the original video that I put up called Quitting, which was just basically about, my original video kind of talking about real estate. It seemed like you guys were really interested in that. So that's why I made this video. That's why I'm making those other two videos. The other two videos, I really wanted to address what people had said to me in the comments. Because it was all good, you know what I mean? But there were some really true statements and some of the things that they said really resonated with me. And I wanted to kind of personally be able to address them. So that video is going to be 10 or 15 comments that I'm responding to. So I really look forward to making that video because I love that back and forth dialogue. As you guys know, usually I respond to every comment anyways. So with that said, I will see you guys in the next video.